Hey everyone, welcome back to Kicks and Picks podcast. Coach Steve here with Nick and Scotty. Coming off another middling week, as Scott put it, another just floating around 500 week. Not the way we like to go, but better than some of the weeks we've had since the international break. The international break really took a lot of wind out of our sails, but we are back to talk about the big upcoming match this weekend between Scotty's Liverpool and Manchester United, as well as reviewing the Champions League group stages and giving you some winners where we are going. We promise we will get out of this funk sooner or later. So as Scotty said, Scott, you said it before we came on, just fade Scott because you just can't buy one lately.
I think I have 4 0-3 weeks so far this season, and obviously 0 3-0 weeks. Maybe I have one, but it's not been good. My strategy has been to take the favorable lines on the top teams. So whenever there's a favorable line on Tottenham or City or Arsenal, I'm usually on that, and somehow it just doesn't work. Yet those teams seem to be at the top of the table. So I have yet to really figure out how I'm down so many units when my plays have been so heavily on the top clubs. But we push on. We'll see if we can't get some 3-0 weeks to finish out the year and maybe start to approach break even by end of AFCON.
So if anybody wants to know what Scotty really is doing, you will conveniently notice Liverpool is at the top of the table. And Scotty is doing his method of, I'm going to bet on Arsenal this week. I'm going to bet on Man City, knowing that this power that he has is going to make those teams lose, get Liverpool hopping up in the standings, and it has worked out to perfection. Oh man, how could City lose? They did it. It's great.
Yeah. It's the emotional hedge again. These two teams are both in the top 4. It's not like they're having bad seasons, and I have taken them a healthy amount. It just does not seem to play out when I'm on them.
Fair enough. No, I think super frustrating week is one of those for me. So I had 3 games that I picked. Obviously, our hat trick of picks every week. Each and every game had a red card, so something you can't really handicap for. And I went 1 and 2. The 2 losses had goals. One game had a goal in the 95th minute for a loss. The other game had goal in the 94th and 99th minute for a loss. So we were well on track to 3-0. We had the fucking hook and red cards in all 3 games, 94 plus minute goals. I mean, it's just cruel week, cruel game. Not much you can do about it. I would just love to get some of those 95th minute goals for a winner for a change, because that doesn't ever seem to happen.
No, I mean, the one you lost the Sassuolo bet on Monday was like, how often does Cagliari score an overhead kick in the 98th minute or whatever?
They don't score 2 goals in a game all year, let alone in 5-minute span. And then of course they're both fucking bangers. We got Lapadula with a top shelf goal, his first of the year, and then Pavoletti, who I didn't even realize was still playing. This dude's got to be about 40, and he does a bicycle kick in the 99th minute to win. So, I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah, that's never easy to watch. It's almost as bad when you're keeping track of a match on your phone and you it's in the 90th minute. So you go to check and you're like, all right, now it's counting up on one of the apps. Then all of a sudden it says 5 minutes of stoppage time and it's up to 98, and you're not watching. Why the fuck is there 3 minutes past?
Right. And you know what's happening.
And then lo and behold, it was a penalty kick that happened with the Bologna-Lecce match a couple weeks ago that we had as a patron pick. And I'm like, why is it still going? Why is it still going? Yep. And then a couple seconds later, there pops up the little goal symbol with the ball going in. You're like, oh, penalty kick. That's a great way to lose a bet. You can't predict these things. I think the reads have been pretty good for us. I mean, I thought your reads were good last week and things just didn't break the right way.
I think I might, over the holiday break, I'm going to make it into a project and go back and look. I have to imagine we have lost at least 5 to 8 games, 5 to 8 bets in the 94th minute or later. Have to.
Yeah.
There's no time period that didn't really even exist until this season with the new stoppage time rules.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of those goals don't happen. I mean, we don't want to sit here and cry about it. That's not what we're trying to do. Just, I guess, trying to make ourselves feel a little bit better about our reads and the outcome. But let's get into the Champions League because it ended today. The group stage wrapped up. Some surprises, and we'll get through them. We did do a Champions League group preview episode earlier, and when it kicked off back in September. these were not our predictions of who would win the group, but more like what's the best bet at the value of it is that could possibly happen. Maybe take a stab at it if you feel like this team could do what we're suggesting. Not that we thought like, Napoli was going to outdo Real Madrid, just the value was on Napoli, so to speak, as an example. So starting Group A, the way the group ended was Bayern Munich, 16 points, 5 wins and a draw. No surprise there. Copenhagen ended up beating Galatasaray on the last match day, 1-0 in Denmark. That was the difference, them advancing ahead of the Turkish side. And that was, we had Bayern minus 160. We said it was pretty good value for them. It's not something you're going to see too often, especially in a group like they had. We had our to advance advice was Galatasaray. Came down to the last match day. I think still would have made that suggestion looking back at plus 250. Just didn't get the job done in Denmark. I don't know. Maybe I thought yesterday too, thinking about the way they were level on points, one team needed to win. I would have picked the side with Icardi and Mertens and some of these veterans that have been there, done that, and they didn't get it done.
Yeah, listen, I think going into the last match day, the Galatasaray to advance was plus 250, by the way. So solid value. I'm sure Copenhagen was even higher. So, I mean, listen, not going to take credit away from them, right? But going into the last match day with a chance to still cash that bet, I mean, felt pretty good about it. Copenhagen's a strong team. They only gave up 8 goals throughout the entire group. I mean, when you're playing United, when you're playing a Galatasaray away, and I'm pretty sure there's 3 goals just in that game. So you only gave up 5 goals combined to Bayern and Man United over 4 games. I mean, it's pretty impressive. You got to give it to them.
I think one of those games, I think is their opening match against United, they were down a man for most of it, right? I think it was like a 10-11, and it was like ended up being a 2-2 draw. So full strength. They think they played really, really well.
Yep. Shout out them.
So they were up a man in that United match and won 3-2 in
up
match
the
day
man.
2. They were up the man, yeah.
It was they were that's what it is. They were down a man to Galatasaray. It wasn't United.
Are you referring to? Oh no, you're referring to Copenhagen. I was referring to Galatasaray. Copenhagen was down a man to Galatasaray, and they finished 2-2 in that match.
Yeah.
So ended up being a pretty crucial point for them in the end. That could have gone the other way in Turkey. Yeah. I almost forgot. United was in that group. They were last, eliminated completely from Europe.
Love it.
So that is something we can probably, tie into our match preview when we get there. Very disappointing for United. Moving on to Group B, Arsenal won the group on 13 points. PSV second on 9. Lens from France, 8 points. Just missed out. They'll go to Europa League. And then it's Sevilla. Kind of surprised there. Only finished with 2 points. Not the easiest group in terms of like everybody below Arsenal. I think we all figured Arsenal was the team to beat. We did peg them at minus 180. Not something we're really going to throw too much on at minus 180, but we didn't feel comfortable tabbing anybody else to possibly upend them. We did have PSV as our value pick to advance at plus 155. Panned out pretty well. They're playing very well right now. Arsenal for a little bit at the beginning looked a little shaky when they did lose in France to Lens, but bounced back, got the wins that they needed, and won the group. So to me, no surprises there. The biggest surprise to me was Sevilla. I was going to say, in terms of who advanced, wasn't super surprising to me because PSV has been great in Holland.
Because we called it.
The fact that Sevilla didn't even finish third, I think, is the surprise. I think we all would have pegged
arguably the biggest surprise of the group stage is Sevilla not dropping into Europa to make their Europa League run. That's like, you can set your clock to that. It's like you got daylight savings times and you got Europa League Sevilla coming in hot. So it's definitely a weird one. I mean, did they win a game? No, they had 2 draws.
No, they did not.
It's a pretty poor effort by them, especially against the Lens side that I think has been doing okay in League One this season, but not great.
Giving up a lot of goals.
And PSV scores lots of goals historically, but I think they conceded more in the group stage than they scored. So there's opportunity there to take points too. So it's a weird one from Sevilla.
Year too late for me as a Roma fan. I can say that. I would have loved them to have crashed out in the group stage last year, been eliminated completely. But yeah, I do agree there. I think that was a surprise.
Yeah, RIP. I mean, that was our Europa League winner last year. Scotty and I gave that future out. I think it was plus 1,100 or plus 1,200, something like that.
Yeah.
So definitely a little soft spot for them, but they haven't been good. They haven't been good in Spain. They were awful in this group. I mean, tough group, right? But to not even see them go down, I think we maybe overvalued, not that we picked them or anything, but just coming into the group, I think we thought they'd at least make third place, probably overvalued the team they were last year. And I think that's a pretty good segue into Group C, because there's another team that I think has a soft spot on the podcast, and we definitely overvalued how good they were last year. So
moving on to Group C, Real Madrid, perfect record, 18 points, running this group, only conceded 7 in 6 matches. Napoli finished second comfortably on 10 points with 3 wins, a draw, and 2 losses. Braga of Portugal finished third on 4 points, and Union Berlin only 2 draws and 4 losses. And that's what Nick's referring to, right? Last year, they were a cash cow for me much of the year. I hit quite a few locks on them. They were so undervalued most of the time that they ended up qualifying for a Champions League spot. We're in the mix in the top 2 or 3 for a long, long time into the season. We pegged Napoli as our value pick to win the group. We all did feel like Real Madrid was probably the pick. But if you wanted to look for some value at plus 230, Napoli maybe would have a shot if they could have won in Naples, which they did not. Our advice to advance as like a value pick was Union at plus 300. Maybe they could slip by Napoli and these other sides. They have been an utter disaster this year. They've been terrible. I'm going to double check right now, but I believe they're still in the relegation zone in the Bundesliga.
They had winless in their last like 8 matches.
They had their first win in like 15.
They slipped just out of the relegation zone in Germany. Now they're on 10 points, 1 point out. But yeah, I believe
coach had that as a loser last week. Right? Wasn't that?
It might have been 2 weeks. No, it was last week against Mönchengladbach.
Yeah. And they scored 3 goals.
Them, and then they came back and bit me.
Nick, I'm going to play a little game with you right now. I'm putting you on the spot. We didn't talk about this before the podcast. You talk about our favorite team, Sevilla, in Europa League that we like to put future on, not in the mix. Real Madrid, our other favorite team to put future on, usually in Champions League.
Yep.
Where do you think their odds are now, following the group stage, are to win Champions League?
So if I'm looking at the teams who advanced, I think there's maybe 3 or 4 similar teams, maybe 1 or 2 that are slightly better than them. But I'm guessing, that the books always tend to favor. I'm going to guess Real's not a great number. They got to be under plus 1,000. If I had to guess, they're around plus 700 to win the whole thing.
Not bad. Yeah, they're plus 500. They're third, so you got that neighborhood pretty correct. Man City, the current favorites at plus 225. Bayern after that plus 450.
Okay. No, that's gross. Bad number.
Not yet. There's time though. I think we got time, and we'll see. Because I think once you see some of these other teams drop out and the path becomes known, then you can usually get Real Madrid maybe a little bit better. But we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on to Group D. Competitive at the top in terms of who finished first, but not really competitive across the board. Real Sociedad beat out Inter on goal differential. Both finished with 12 points. Benfica finished third on 4 points, and Salzburg fourth. They're out of Europe also on 4 points. Benfica salvaged any kind of European football on the last match day, winning in Austria. They were a team that we pegged as a possible 2 advanced side. Head of Sociedad at minus 170, who had Inter to win the group at minus 115. So goal differential bid us there. Inter didn't play their strongest squad against Sociedad on match day 5.
Or the match before. I mean, 2 matches, they mailed it in.
Or match day 6. And then also match day 5, they kind of mailed it in because they had a big head-to-head coming up. They kind of knew they would advance. So threw us a little bit there. But Benfica, I think, is the big disappointment there.
Yeah, I'll say Sociedad's better than we probably thought coming into the Champions League. I think they've opened up a lot of eyes watching them. They've also been good in the league. I say this, we go on with Andrew at the Plus Money Pod all the time. He is a huge fucking fan of this Sociedad team. And I've had this conversation with him where it's like, these guys aren't household names. I can't name 5 players on the team, but every time I watch them, I walk away kind of like impressed. You're like, wow, okay. Everybody kind of seems to know what they're doing. They seem to have good instincts, good ball control skills. They move the game, like they control the game. And that's what we saw, right? They didn't drop a match, right? 3 wins, 3 draws. Good on them. Just kind of assumed by name Benfica would be a little bit better, a little bit more prepared, but happy for a change.
Yeah, and I mean it's tough for us because we had Inter to win this group at minus 115 and to lose out on a goal differential of basically 2 goals. It's like just narrow miss, but it's a miss nonetheless. Kind of a
Yeah.
story of our season as a whole.
Right. They gave up 3 goals to João Mario, so that should probably fucking do it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
so
that'll do you in.
one of our black marks on the group stage is coming down to the goal differential thanks to João Mario.
All right, moving on to Group E, we have Atletico Madrid, 14 points, won the group. Lazio second on 10. Just completely derailed Nick Sadi out campaign a couple weeks ago.
They do that.
Feyenoord, 6 points. They go down to Europa, and then Celtic finished last on 4 points. This one we nailed. We had Atletico as our team to win the group at minus 145, Lazio to advance at minus 150. No big surprises. I thought Feyenoord might have been a little bit tougher on Lazio, but they didn't prove to be. So I think pretty much what we expected here.
Yeah, Lazio finished strong. I think they had a rocky start, but picking up 2 wins in their last 3 matches is certainly enough. And then Feyenoord the exact opposite. They didn't get a single point after match week 3 in the Champions League. So, and that's the tail of the tape. You gotta keep that momentum up. And I don't know if Feyenoord have been hit with injuries or anything, but it's kind of a tough one when you can get out to 2 wins in 3 matches and then you still kind of crash out. I guess they have the Europa, but hopes have to be higher after that kind of a start.
Yeah. And to be out by match day 5, I think is the disappointing part for them. They didn't even make it to match day 6, where it was like down to them and Lazio after that pretty good start.
Yeah, listen, champions of Holland last year too, right? Like, has to be said. They're solid squad in the Conference League final, right? Last year or 2 years ago, or
they lost to Roma in the Conference League final
right?
2 years ago, and then the Europa League, I think, quarterfinals to Roma last year.
Okay, so obviously, look, strong seasoned European team. We said this group, I very vividly remember the conversation. It's going to come down to who takes care of Celtic, and if somebody can squeak out a head-to-head win between Lazio and Feyenoord, that's really going to be the team that goes through, and that's what happened. We saw Lazio, 6 points against Celtic, difference in the group.
Yeah. All right, Group F. We kind of didn't get this one right. This was labeled the group of death at the beginning. It was PSG, Dortmund, Milan, and Newcastle, and it ended up being Dortmund who won the group on 11 points. Only scored 7 goals, but only conceded 4. So that was a bit surprising from a Bundesliga side. Bundesliga is kind of known for their goals. PSG finished second on goal differential, just ahead of Milan with their 9 scored and 8 conceded. Milan only scored 5 and also conceded 8. So they go on that -3 goal differential. They lose out by 4 goals. Newcastle finishes dead last, and they are out after a late loss at home today to Milan. They're out of Europe completely. That makes 2 Premier League sides that are out of Europe completely, not even finishing in the top 3 of their group. So that could affect coefficients, which I'll mention at the end. We had Milan as a value pick to win the group at plus 400. I know I personally took that myself because I thought they had enough to get out of it. Did not. We also gave them that as our value to advance at plus 125. We missed out on that on goal differential. I think Dortmund's the biggest surprise in terms of how well they perform, because I think they were tabbed as the worst odds to get out of this group of death, because people were high on Newcastle and PSG and Milan for good reason for the most part. And Dortmund, they got the job done. That Champions experience came through for them.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, my lasting memory of Newcastle's campaign was the fact that they beat PSG 4-0 at home. And so for them, that's I guess they got a point in the second to last week, but I think that was their last success in the Champions League, and now they'll be out of Europe completely. They don't even have a chance to make a Europa run, because if they had made it into that 3rd spot, and I think they were in it at the end of the first half of the match today, they were technically still in Europa. They could have been one of those teams
that goal about the 80th minute or so.
Yeah, so I mean, they would have been a perfect team to make a deep run and potentially, at least get a Europa final out of it. Really tough for them. That home atmosphere I thought was going to be enough to carry them the last 3 weeks, and it didn't work.
Yeah, listen, tough group, right? We all mentioned group of death. I'm a little bummed because on that show and privately to you guys, I kind of tip PSG as like, this is a dark horse to not even advance out of the group, because A, the group is strong, and B, PSG is really not that good. We kind of saw that throughout the course of the group, right? You mentioned Newcastle destroyed them very easily. Listen, they look good in that Dortmund game today. I mean, I have to kind of give it to them. Dortmund's keeper was fucking outstanding, but they also give up as many good chances as they generate. So, ultimately they were able to make it through, but everybody's kind of lucky Milan didn't win one of those first two games. They had Newcastle and Dortmund 0-0, and Scotty coined it, Chances FC. Milan, I think, had 18 shots and 20 shots in those two games. So, like, literally dominated start to finish. They get a goal in either one of those games, this group is flipped on its head. So, really, really fascinating from match week 1 all the way to match week 6. And, good on these teams. You were always going to feel upset if you didn't make it out, but somebody was going to finish last.
Yeah, and if I told you at the beginning of the group PSG were going to get 2 points out of their last 3 matches, I think you would have believed what you said, Nick, that there's no chance that they're advancing yet.
Right.
That's exactly what happened, and they've barely made it through just on a goal differential.
Yep.
Yeah, so the last 2 groups we didn't give out any betting suggestions because the odds were too long on the teams that we figured would win and did end up winning the group. Man City, perfect record, 18 points. Followed by RB Leipzig, 12 points, won all 4 of their matches that didn't involve facing Man City head to head. We said that they would win and that they would advance. Group H, Barca to win. We said they ended up winning a goal differential against Porto, so not as clean cut as maybe we expected. And we also had Porto to advance. The odds were too long on both those sides also to give them out as winners. So all as expected there. Not much surprising there.
Yeah, listen, I think overall we did fucking awesome. We predicted 5 out of the 8 group winners. I mean, you can't really do much more than that. We gave out 2 really strong plus money to advances. So happy with our work.
Wait, I'm sorry. I'm looking at Group H right now, and I'm seeing goal differential for Barca at 6 and Porto at 7.
Head to head,
So why
I
is
think.
Barcelona on top? Oh, it's head to head.
Yeah,
so it wasn't
head-to-head
Barca
Barca beat
them.
Okay.
No.
I was like, am I tripping?
No, Barca beat them.
Okay.
Yeah, they beat them. So I guess that was the differential first tiebreak. So Nick, I'll before we move on, I'm going to throw it at you because you have a team that finished second in the group here. So looking at the group winners, if you're Lazio, I mean, on paper, do you want Dortmund or Sociedad? Like, which of those group winners is more favorable? Because I think you want to avoid Bayerns and the Reals of the world, obviously.
Listen, in all reality, there's not a team there that Lazio beats. I think I'd be very, very, very surprised if they beat anybody. But I would say Sociedad probably because I think they play a little bit of a slower, more methodical. Lazio can catch up to its style. That would probably be my preference, gun to my head. But I don't know that there's a team that Lazio is even close to.
All right.
Yeah, I threw out Lazio more of a hypothetical. Like if you're a second place side, your side just happened to be there. But I'm looking at Sociedad. They only conceded twice, and they played Inter very well. So yeah, I think from a Lazio standpoint, they're obviously very difficult for them to get through. But let's say like looking at like a PSG, like you're not going to want to get Bayern in the next round. You're probably, I guess, hoping for Sociedad or you can't get Dortmund, right? Like.
I mean, before Scotty's thoughts,
no easy match either. I
guess that's what I was going to say. Eventually, you go through the big teams, right? So whether you do it early on or later, I mean, I guess money matters, right? Because every match you win, it's a shit ton of money. But if you're a Bayern Munich, does it really matter? No.
Yeah, I mean, didn't Inter and Milan kind of get through to like the semis through a pretty easy path last year, if I'm remembering the bracket correctly?
Yeah, they had all the Portuguese sides.
Teams. Yeah.
The Portuguese sides at Milan.
Possible. Yeah. And then it was like Chelsea and Real Madrid and Bayern and PSG were all on the other side of the bracket.
Yeah. I mean, sorry to cut you off, Scotty. I'm not really seeing a weak side compared to like Copenhagen, I guess, is the weakest side maybe. And they looked pretty fucking good. I don't know.
Well, Nick, that segues perfectly into my game that I was going to play with you. There's 16 teams left. Where do you think Lazio currently stand in terms of longest odds remaining?
I would say
you don't have to give me the odds, but just like what team do you think? Like,
no, I would say it's either 14 or 15. I'll say 14.
Yeah, they're 15th behind PSV Eindhoven. So Lazio right now plus 15,000, Copenhagen plus 25,000, Eindhoven and Porto both at plus 10,000.
Yeah. Okay. Pretty good at this.
That's why we call you odds maker Nick.
All right. So interesting thing I just saw on Twitter as we were, logging on is the updated coefficients with Newcastle and Man U both crashing out. That is two less opportunities for England to pick up points in the
There is.
coefficients. And only the top two teams in coefficients get at fifth place in the Champions League that we were talking about a few weeks ago. Scott was mentioning, maybe Newcastle or somebody gets at fifth place and becomes a Champions League spot. That's not looking so guaranteed for England right now. In fact, it's getting a little bit dicey. If you think back to last year, how Italy had three teams in the final of European competitions. If teams like that from Italy or Germany make runs like that again, it gets a bit difficult for England with two less sides to rely on. They're going to have to kind of hope that Villa does some work in Conference League. I would imagine City continues to dominate Champions League like they have. Because right now it's Germany at 13.36, Italy 13.14, England at 12.13, and Italy does have all seven teams still alive in European competitions. I'm not sure about Germany off the top of my head, but I know Italy has all seven. 3 in Champions League, 3 in Europa, and 1 in Conference League. So England's gonna have a little work cut out for them.
Yeah, I think in a weird way, I'm actually hoping they don't get it, because if only the top 4 in England go to Champions League, I feel, oh my god, I should knock on wood. I feel pretty secure about Liverpool at this point in terms of that. But that means you're looking at Newcastle and United fighting Aston Villa realistically for that 4th spot. Otherwise, if it's 5, I think you can pretty much pencil in Newcastle again. I think that'll be.
I love how you didn't even include Tottenham in that, just for what it's worth. I mean, like, that was an excellent omission. I love it.
Tottenham won't even be in Europe next year. They're not going to make Conference or Europa. I'll put that prediction out there right now.
Love it.
But I do think, unfortunately for me, in the sense, that the two favorites for Champions League and Europa are probably Liverpool. We have to see how the Liverpool or the Europa group stage finishes on Thursday, but I imagine it'll be Liverpool will be the odds-on favorite, and City are the current odds-on favorite for Champions League. So I think if those two teams make deep enough runs, that's certainly going to be enough to get past Germany. It probably will be enough to get past Italy.
And I think that depends too on how, like, if you have some Italy-England finals again like last year, then they're gonna have to win those head-to-heads. I think that will certainly help them, but I think it's just not as cut and dry as many people would have imagined. Like, I don't think anybody thought United and Newcastle would both be out, not even in Europa League after the group stage. But Villa in that Conference League is probably going to be the favorite, especially the way they're playing domestically right now.
True.
Like you said, Liverpool is probably still the favorite in Europa, along with probably Leverkusen. Maybe if Roma gets their act
PSG.
together, maybe PSG.
Not PSG, Milan. Excuse me,
Milan. Milan's going to be in the mix, right? So that's Europa League's never easy. It's not so cut and dry. We've seen that, and I guess it really comes down to City getting to work, right? But it's going to be, I think, a little more interesting than people thought. I think when they saw, all right, a 5th place team is going to be going to Europe, I think a lot of people just assumed that England would be one of those two that is definitely going to have a 5th team.
I wish they had odds on this, because I bet you England still are the odds-on favorite to get a 5th spot with the teams that are left.
Wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, I mean, with Arsenal and City both still in the Champions League, they, those two probably have some pretty decent odds to get deep.
Yeah, and Germany's hopes really rely heavily on Bayern right now.
Only on Bayern.
And Bayern, we saw how they looked, last weekend in the league. So they're capable of putting up a dud.
Not for anything, they didn't look spectacular against United. It was an easy victory, but it's not that they look good.
And they played a full lineup. It wasn't even like they were rested, which was crazy to me. I don't know why they did that, but maybe it's just to try to get the stink of their weekend match off of them. Didn't really help.
Yeah. All right. So we'll leave Champions League there. I'm sure we'll be back before the knockout rounds once those odds come out and just closer with some previews of that, obviously. But now it's looking back to domestic football this weekend. The big match we're going to look at before we get into our locks is Liverpool against Manchester United. Liverpool, big favorites at home at Anfield, minus 320. Man U, plus 700 on the money line. Draw line, plus 500. The over-under is set at 3.5 with the over at minus 125, the under at minus 105. I mean, I guess it's definitely worth looking at some of those scenarios. If you think United can get anything with like a +1 or whatever, I'll let you guys do the talking, especially you, Scott, since it's your Liverpool side. But man, there's Liverpool minus 320 at home. It just kind of speaks to the way United's been playing, crashing out of Europe, not playing well domestically. Is there any hope for United to get a result in this one?
You or me?
Go
Me.
ahead, Nick, because I
Okay.
have plenty to
Yeah.
say.
No, I figured you did. I would probably say this game has Ten Hag's job on it. I really believe it does. I think if he gets blown out of the building by Liverpool, which is very possible, I'm not going to say it's likely. I'm going to say it's very possible. If he gets blown out of the building, I don't really know where he goes from there. I mean, they're in sixth place, so they're on the outside looking in. Newcastle and Brighton breathing down their neck. They have 7 losses in 16 matches. Obviously, we talked about getting out of Europe altogether. That's a massive failure, no matter which way you look at it. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that turns into a huge motivator for this squad, or if we see the same United that we've seen over the past 3 or 4 weeks. I can tell you that we publicly and privately have been fading United pretty successfully, right? We've been pretty harsh on them. And Liverpool look good, right? I mean, obviously Scotty will get into it, but winners of 4 out of their last 5. They have depth, attacking depth coming out of their ass. They've made up for some defensive efficiencies and midfield deficiencies. I mean, I have to give them credit, right? Klopp just, I don't know that he's gotten enough credit for how good and how consistent he's been year in and year out. Maybe he has, but I feel like he's gotten forgotten about maybe a little bit because now there's this new wave of managers that all these hipsters want to pretend are, the greatest thing ever. Guys like Klopp, guys like Mad Max, they just fucking steer the ship forward and they figure it out. So good on Poole. I have a couple of betting thoughts in this one. I hate the number, but Salah anytime minus 135. I think that just tells a story in itself. He just has popped up in every single fucking game. Whether, Poole have been cruising and they're popping in 3 or 4, he seems to score. If they're tied or behind and they need a goal, he seems to score. So would not shock me to see him score in this game. I'm not necessarily advocating for that. And if you look at the lines, man, I mean, you got to go Liverpool -2, -1.75. If you're looking at the Asian lines to get any sort of playable number on Liverpool. So books are kind of telling you where to go here. I would say that I do tend to lean United plus 1.75 because I think they'll be fighting for their lives, but it's tough to go against Liverpool in this one. I mean, I don't know that I'm necessarily betting it. I don't even know that I'm taking goals. But it's going to be fascinating to watch because even with Liverpool team goals, you need 2.5 to get close to even money. And it's not close. It's -130. So struggling to find anything playable if you're not putting the absolute house on Liverpool. But I think that's for good reason.
And just some trends before you go, Scott. I was just going to throw some
ahead.
trends out that might fit into this. Head-to-head, more than 2.5 goals in 7 out of 7, which is why we see that line set 3.5. Less than 4.5 cards in 8 out of 10. Less than 10.5 corners in 6 out of 8. And just going back to last season, back in March, Liverpool scored a touchdown on United at Anfield. I think that also plays into this. Besides the fact that Liverpool is unbeaten in their last 6 and Man U does not have a clean sheet in their last 5.
No, I'm sorry. One last thing to just throw out as I'm continuing to look through. Liverpool win and over 3.5 is even money.
Yeah,
like that's fucking insane. Like absolutely insane. So could this be a 4-0 Liverpool win? Man, I hope so. But I don't know. It's just a tough one to bet on, quite honestly.
Yeah, and so maybe I can get in on. I'm trying to figure out where I want to start because Nick, you brought up so many good points. Kudos to you. I'll start. I'll keep with the trends for now. You guys talking about goals scored. So in Premier League fixtures head to head, Liverpool has scored 4 or more goals in 4 out of those 5 last matches. So
that's nuts.
Yeah. In 3 of those 5, they have won 2-0. So you have the 7-0 win that coach just mentioned. Then there was a 2-1 United win. So that's the only one that was kind of close. And then you have a 4-0 win to Liverpool, a 5-0 win with a United red card thrown in there, and then a 4-2 Liverpool win over Manchester United. And that goes back to the end of the 2021 season. So Liverpool's got a long history right now of running it up on Manchester United while they've been trying to figure out who the next manager is. And I think maybe that's where I'll start, Nick, because you brought up a good point. It feels like, I think in any other scenario, Ten Hag's future at the club kind of does hinge on this performance. Like they just, they had this run of good performances that brought them all the way up into sixth. And I think I said it on the pod or on our Patreon, but I was like, that's kind of a sheep in wolf's clothing in a weird way, because they were playing against like the Bournemouths and Luton Towns, and it was a really soft point of their schedule. So they're getting the points they needed, but they weren't beating these quality teams. And then, obviously losing 3-0, at home to Bournemouth. It's like Bournemouth's first win at Old Trafford. It's first time, Bournemouth have a clean sheet against United. It's first time United have given up 3 or more goals to Bournemouth. There's a whole bunch of firsts, and it just felt bad. And then obviously getting completely knocked out of Europe at midweek, going into this matchup where they have obviously a track record of conceding a lot and being rather embarrassed in such a, historic rivalry. If history were to repeat itself, I think you would expect change to be made, even though I don't think that's the right call.
Right.
There've been the rumors of, he's lost the locker room again. Half the locker room doesn't respect him. And that's been like the tale every single time with these managers at United. And I put it out on Twitter. I was like, it sounds like at this point, just replace half the locker room, because you can't just keep bringing in, like, they're not bringing in chopped meat. They're bringing in quality managers that have, history of success across Europe. It's not the manager. I think the good news is, if you are Eric Ten Hag, is the club is so dysfunctional that what I'm reading online is that they're in the middle of this minority takeover by Jim Radcliffe and his investment firm Ineos. And the whole plan is that the Radcliffe will take over, even though it's minority investment, control of the footballing, duties and operations. And it sounds like this takeover has been kind of in limbo now for 5 months, I think. And they don't want to make any actual structural decisions, including changes at manager, until that is finished. So in a weird way, like, I think they're kind of in limbo when they're going to continue doing what they have until this, transaction, for the lack of a better word, is complete. So it's funny that United are in such turmoil and disarray that, their manager is actually safe because of it, even though under other circumstances he may not.
Yeah,
Getting into go ahead, Coach.
I was just going to say, like, you think back to last year, how Ten Hag seemed to have everything going right for them, right? Finished comfortably third. By the last few match weeks, there was no question they were a Champions League side, and it just kind of unraveled. So I was just kind of looking at their numbers, and last season, I just did, a kind of a ratio to see like how much they're underperforming compared to last year. They've only got 18 goals scored right now. Based on how many they scored over the course of the full season last year, they should have about 25 if they wanted to match that pace. The defense isn't terribly worse. They've conceded 21. They would have conceded about 18 last year at the pace they went at. So it's just like they don't produce enough attack, and they still haven't drawn a match, which shows that they can't even steal a point here or there to kind of, avoid a loss that could be, damaging to them.
No, that's before we kick it back to Scotty. I think that's one point, Steve. Like I said it last week, I think on the show, at some point we're just going to start taking United draw every single match until it hits, because if you hit in the next 2 or 3 matches, you're up a ton of money. But one thing I want to kind of go back to when I say, his job is probably on the line. It looks bad, but it doesn't look bad on the surface, right? Okay, you're in 6th place. You're 2 or 3 wins maybe out of the top 4, but what team are you taking out? You're not better than Liverpool. You're not better than Arsenal. You're not better than City. You're not replacing one of those teams. And Scotty mentioned it, so I'm kind of repeating, but like Villa, Tottenham, Newcastle, Brighton, maybe even West Ham, who's within 3 points of you, like there's no conceivable way that this team finishes top 4 as constructed with Ten Hag as the manager. It just doesn't seem possible. And that's kind of why I think another embarrassing result after getting knocked out of Europe could be the end.
Yeah. United's season last year looks a lot better because Marcus Rashford went on an incredible run where he was scoring or assisting in like 11 straight games. It was unbelievable. This season, he has 2 goals, 1 assist in the Premier League. And he's not alone. The United forwards have been dismal. They brought in Højlund, who's been virtually invisible. Martial has barely touched the field. When he does, he's also invisible. Anthony has been a letdown. Obviously, Jadon Sancho has been, exiled from the club. They sold Ronaldo this time last year, and we thought things are going to kind of get better, and they did. But they struggle for goals up top. They don't have any creativity up there. And so I think that's really where they struggle right now is, just trying to, take advantage of, when they do have quality play in the midfield and when their backline is solid, getting through and scoring those opportunities. So we'll see. I mean, I think Ten Hag is partially to blame for some of that. He's been known to be stubborn with certain players. I don't think we know the full story because we've heard all the leaks coming out of the locker room about he's lost a lot of the players' trust. And so if he's making weird personnel decisions, it might just be because, attitude is a problem. And I think with United, you really have to get the attitude of the players on track first and not worry about the ability, because they have loads of ability. Those forwards I just listed are all, 60 to 80 million pound players at one point in their time. And it's for a reason. It's just they've come in, they get these fat contracts and they don't really want to prove it. I think I said it earlier. I said that, they're the type of players that prefer to spend their money instead of figuring out ways to continue to earn it and justify it on the pitch. So United certainly in turmoil. And I'll shift gears into Liverpool. I think as a Liverpool fan, I hate seeing lines like this because it just sets it up for disaster. I get it. Liverpool have certainly looked good. They've pulled out wins the last week when maybe they haven't been at their best. They barely pulled out a win against Crystal Palace. Palace was unbelievably organized in the back. I was making fun of their 8-man box. You're looking at the heat map and Liverpool's possession was just red all over the pitch. And then you get to the box and it's just empty. And so credit to them for doing so well. The red card, I think, kind of turned things, and Salah got his goal, and then Elliott comes on and proves my point time and time again about why squad depth is so important, because you can come on in the 80th minute and get a 90th minute, perhaps season defining goal, depending on how results come out. So Liverpool haven't been looking at their best, but there is reason to believe why they are so heavily favored. The only attacking player on United that's been decent has been Bruno Fernandes, 3 goals, 3 assists. He kind of picked up a little cheap yellow card, which has gotten conspiracy theorists out there saying that he did it on purpose to avoid Liverpool, because he's now suspended for the match. So
Sure.
Their lacking in attack is becoming even more lacking for this one. But I think Liverpool have their own concerns at attack. Nunez hasn't scored a goal in 9 games. He has plenty of opportunities. He's struggling with his finishing. The joke around Liverpool right now is he can only score worldies. He can't really score the tap-ins, and it's kind of coming true. Luis Diaz has been decent, but not the same since he had to deal with that issue with his dad. So I think he's still trying to come back into form. Jota
let me
obviously
pause
hurt
there, Scotty. I think my boy Diaz has more goals VAR'd than he does scored at this point.
Yeah,
he has been super unlucky.
Killed me in the shot on target parlay last weekend. So Liverpool have their own attacking options. The good news is their midfield overhaul has been beyond anybody's imagination, to the point where Klopp was at an event. This is probably inside baseball for you guys, but Klopp was Liverpool are opening up the second tier of their Anfield Road stand this weekend against United. So 7,000 extra fans at Anfield. They had a little test event to make sure it was safe, and Klopp gave a speech during it, and he made fun of the transfer window because if you dial it back, Liverpool were linked to Romeo Lavia from Southampton. They were linked to Moises Caicedo from Brighton. Chelsea came in, snapped up both of those players, caused Liverpool to look elsewhere. Then they brought in Endo, they brought in Szoboszlai, they brought in, Gravenberch, all guys who've been very impressive. While the Chelsea players maybe haven't been so. And so the midfield overhaul, like I said, as good as anyone could have expected, probably exceeds most expectations. And that's really what's been carrying them. They've been getting a lot of goals from midfield, a lot of creative play. So I think that's where these lines are coming from. I think the expectation is Liverpool's going to dominate the midfield. They're going to dominate possession. They're going to create loads. Salah will probably get his, as Nick mentioned. My concern as always is going to be their defense. Virgil van Dijk, I think, back to his form, but somehow, even with Alisson between the posts, they still concede first on a irregular basis and are constantly having to play from behind. So I think just once I would like to see Liverpool try and score first. I don't know what the odds are. I don't have them up in front of me, but I'm guessing at this point they have to be favorites to score first finally. And that I think that'll be the key.
Liverpool -340.
Yeah. So maybe you know what? Maybe I'll just take it the other way, just because it's just their trend. They just don't like to score first. But we'll see.
So I was going to throw out there the fact that the last 3 seasons, or maybe 4 now, Liverpool's shut out United at home, clean sheet. You have to
Mhm.
go back to, I think it's the 18-19 season, to see any goals from United. Like,
Wow.
if from a betting angle, there's not much you can bet on here. Is Liverpool plus 150 to have a clean sheet worth a look here, considering the history at Anfield
This is where
and
we get
United
into our.
and United struggles?
This is where Nick and I get into our debates, where it's, hey, it's a trend, we should bet it, versus maybe they're due.
Yeah,
Maybe they're
I
due.
mean, it is a trend, but how different were the circumstances over the past 3 or 4 years? You know what I mean? Like, teams are completely different,
I
managers
mean,
are different.
last year they got dismantled by Liverpool when they were the better
Uh,
side than Liverpool a year. So
no doubt. I mean, listen, I don't think that's a bad play in an absence of value. I think that's a solid one. I think Liverpool to win by 2+ goals minus 130 is okay, because that way it's just like kind of a prop bet versus a spread. So you are giving a little bit of juice, but I think 2 goals turns into a win. That's not terrible, but not much.
Yeah. I mean, I have a pick here. I'll save that for our locks, but it
Okay.
definitely seems like it might be too good to be true, because I can't really remember a time. Like, I think even in those games where Liverpool were winning 4-0, the expectations coming into it, despite different circumstances, were never this severe or this extreme. And so it it kind of raises my eyebrow a little
Yeah.
bit. But the flip side is, I mean, we saw in midweek when you know Manchester United were desperate need of goals. They were down 1-0 to Bayern, and they needed a win to advance. And they brought in a bunch of youth players. They brought in Hannibal. They brought in Palistri to replace Garnacho. It's like their depth. It's not even that their attack starters aren't performing. It's like they don't even have depth to bring in to try to change the game. So
Yeah.
it's a weird one. But I don't blame people for expecting this to be another 4-0 type game from Liverpool. I'm just personally, as a Liverpool fan, very nervous about those expectations.
All right, I got one for you here that I've just cooked up here on the same game parlay. I don't know. Every book is different, and we typically give out odds on DraftKings because it's the most widely available in the country. But I'm in Florida, and I'm enjoying Hard Rock Bet, and some options are really good, some are not. But a same game parlay with just 2 selections: Liverpool to win and Liverpool to have the most corners is minus 115, and I fucking love that. And just for reference, we have it here on the bottom of the screen. If you're watching, Liverpool is what, a minus 350 favorite? Liverpool is -3 on the corner spread, and they are team total corners is higher than United by 3. So very heavily favored to get more corners. Obviously, very, very heavily favored to win the game. I think that's as good as you can get it. I'll obviously play around with this. We're doing this in real time, but I think at minus 115, I'm ready to fucking bet that.
We can make that the official pick of the buy or sell segment, if that's what you
There
would
you
like.
go.
I think that makes sense.
So yeah, if you have that option, and then that's one of the cool things that Hard Rock does have, Liverpool to win, Liverpool to get the most corners, minus 115.
It's a good way to find value.
Got to cook. Let Nick cook.
Shoot.
All right, so
Russ.
I think that brings us to our locks of the week, where Scotty is going to lead with one for this match. I think that's a good segue for you, Scotty. Kick us off. What do you got? I'm sensing this is the fan pessimism trying to just kind of,
How is he going to keep Liverpool in
emotionally
first place?
hedge? Yeah, emotionally hedge.
It's not. It's not, because Liverpool can still win, and I can still win my bet. So that's why it's not. Because I would love to take United double chance at plus 240. That's an insane value. I know Nick won't let me, so I'm not going to try. But what I will do is I'm going to take United plus 1.25 goals at plus 130. Again, I'm feeling a little nervous about just the fact that the expectations in the public are so heavily on a massive Liverpool win here. And that's usually when I follow those trends, I get burned. So I'm going to fade the public a little bit on this. But I think there's reason to believe that this is possible simply because, granted, we don't know what Liverpool's lineup is going to be tomorrow in Europa. I'm assuming they're going to rest 90% of their, senior players. But, Liverpool's backline has not looked great. Matip is out. Van Dijk has been playing every single minute of every single match. Has looked great. No complaints, but still concern. Andy Robertson is not back. Left back has been wishy-washy with Samikas. So I think there's a goal in this for United. I truly do. With that said, Liverpool have been scrapping together wins. They haven't really beaten anybody soundly since their 3-0 win against Brentford back in beginning of November. They beat Palace by 1. They beat Sheffield United barely by 2. Fulham they beat by 1. So there's a trend of Liverpool winning close games, similar to what Arsenal has kind of been doing. I can kind of see this one going the similar way, where I think Liverpool will probably be caught in a closer match than they would like. I think United, knowing their attacking struggles, knowing they're going to Anfield and seeing how Liverpool have struggled, especially against Crystal Palace last week against these 8-man boxes, will probably play a very defensive setup. No Bruno Fernandes, so their midfield is probably going to be a little bit more of a defensive midfield setup anyways. So I can see Liverpool struggling to score in this one, especially with Nunez's struggles, especially with the absence of Jota. I could see this being like a 2-1 Liverpool win, and I could even see this being one where just like Liverpool can't get across the line and end up drawing 1-1.
Yeah, listen, the first thing I said without discussing the pick with Scotty or even looking at his pick, United plus 1.75. So Scotty found a lot of value out of it, still at plus money. I think if you were to take anything from that plus 1.25, plus 1.5, plus 1.75, that's also the way I would look to bet this game. So I'm not giving you shit for being, the Liverpool homer and betting, hedging the way you are, but I think that's the correct way to bet this game.
Again, Liverpool one goal win. Everybody's happy.
No.
All right, I'm going to go to Serie A with my first one. It's Juve money line at Genoa minus 130 on Friday. Juve has been absolutely cooking, no losses in their last 10. Having no European football has been great for them domestically. Genoa is a decent mid-table side. They have wins over Roma and Lazio, but Juve is not Roma or Lazio. I like Juve in what should be a low-scoring affair. Both teams generally tend to go under that 2.5. I could definitely see this being a Juve 1-0, 2-0 type victory. I'm confident that Juve is in the cash for us again if they did last week.
Yeah, listen, I don't want to jinx it. So Coach and I were fighting over this pick. I don't want to jinx it. Juve has been a wagon for us. They're getting offered every single week at like this minus 130 number or better. Until that changes, you have to just absolutely ride them. So good for them. Love the pick.
We have come full circle from them being completely banned from bet
Yes,
slips to now being a virtual staple on all of our bet slips.
True. Very true. Shout out Max.
Shout out Max.
All right, I'm going to Coach's squad. So, Scotty, I want you to see if you or I could have predicted any of these things as I list them off. Dybala hurt.
Check.
Jose missing press conferences.
Super check.
Lukaku suspended.
Yeah, check.
Okay, we have all the elements of Roma.
I'm a little
right
surprised
now.
on that one, just because Lukaku has to be healthy in order to get suspended. So
fair, very fair. But he almost broke somebody's ankle last week. I don't know why, but that we'll let Coach maybe explain that one. Coach and I fought last week over what the bet was in the Roma game, but obviously bad circumstances for Roma. 2 red cards. Dybala came off hurt. They're playing midweek. They're not in good shape. Bologna, on the other hand, is fucking rolling. They are in the top 5. I cannot see a way that they do not score in this game. Kind of think that Roma usually, listen, they find a way. They're resilient. They get a goal every now and then, but both teams to score is my pick in this match. It is plus 105. I would not be shocked to see a draw in this game, a 1-1, a 2-2. Both teams to score plus 105. I think you got to ride Bologna to get goals until you don't. So love this.
All right. Second pick. I'm going to keep this one short and sweet. I'm taking Tottenham money line at Nottingham Forest. It's minus 135. I'm 0-2 against betting against Spurs the last 2 weeks. So I'm going to try and switch it up. I'll bet on them. I don't really know why they're still getting points. They don't look great, but they're getting results. I guess the good news here is Nottingham Forest are borderline relegation form. They have 1 point in their last 5 matches, including a 5-0 loss to Fulham, I think last weekend or midweek. It was last weekend. Weirdly enough, their last win was a 2-0 win against Aston Villa. Go figure. But I don't buy that. I think Forest are in dire straits right now. Tottenham should be able to win this. If they don't win this one, then I'm going to ban Tottenham from the bet slip for me personally, because I just can't get them correct right now.
Fair.
All right, I'm going over to the Bundesliga with my second one. I was looking at a different bet involving Inter and Lazio here, but I just found this one and the number was better and I couldn't pass it up. It's Dortmund money line at Augsburg -110. Dortmund just won a Champions League group, like we mentioned, that they weren't even expected to get out of. Now they turn their attention to the league where they need to start winning to secure a top 4 or even top 5 place and possible return to the Champions League next season. I think they're in 6th right now. Number's too good to pass up at -110. They should be feeling pretty confident after drawing PSG. I like them here in this spot. They should be feeling pretty good about themselves, and I think they win at -110.
Yeah, I like it. All right, I'm staying in Italy. I'm going with AC Milan taking on Monza at home. Both teams to score again, -125. I originally liked Monza, on the spread. They were getting a lot of love, but Milan found a way today. It kind of changed my whole perception of are they really going to drop this game? I don't know. The numbers started to change a little bit. I got weary. 5 out of 6 games for Milan and 5 out of 6 games for Monza have had both teams to score. So I think that is a trend that we have to just continue. Milan's D absolutely in shambles. We know that. And I think that they are due for a little bit of a letdown. I see definitely a scoring game here. Could be a scoring draw, scoring win, but both teams to score -125.
All right. I'll wrap this one up with a simple bet. Newcastle versus Fulham, both teams to score and over 2.5. Just kidding. It's not simple. It's more complex than I remember. Is -105. I'm taking this one because Fulham's offense has been unbelievable the last 4 games. They've scored 16 goals in their last 4 matches, including a pair of 5-0 wins last week. Nick, I'm going to give you a chance to guess if you can give me who the leading goal scorer on Fulham is currently in the Premier League.
Oh, man. I have absolutely no idea.
Okay. This is a trick question. It's not a trick question, but it's a good one. It's your boy, Willian, 35 years
No
old.
way.
Still banging in goals for Fulham. Mitrovic, no problem when you got Willian on your squad, I guess. But they're doing it. So I think Fulham here are going to certainly on the score sheet. My guess is Newcastle are going to come back with a vengeance. They no longer have to worry about Europe. Not worry, but it's no longer a thing for them. So I think they can come out. They'll probably get a couple of goals themselves. This one seems like it's going to be at least a 2-2 goal fest. So by all means, both teams to score and over 2.5 at virtually even money seems like a very good pick.
All right. I am also heading to the Premier League with my last one. I'm going Aston Villa moneyline at Brentford +115. Classic letdown game for Villa after beating both City and Arsenal 1-0 in back-to-back home matches over the past week. However, there's no way I'm passing a Villa at plus money the way they're playing. I know they have Conference League tomorrow, but I expect rotation there. And I think if this team is a serious Champions League contender, which they look like it right now, this is the type of match you have to win. And at plus money, I'm not passing it up.
Yeah, I was saying it before the show. You don't beat City and Arsenal, give up 0 goals in those 2 games, and then go and not take care of Brentford. So I was shocked that this was plus money. And I will stay in the Premier League for my final pick. Arsenal, Brighton. We have to bring corners back. When we are in a funk, we go to corners. 9.5, -125. This is like nothing to do with stats, nothing to do really with anything, just kind of a gut feeling. I think this is a game with a lot of chances, potentially a game with a lot of goals. 2 kind of tired teams, so we're going to see some rotation. We're going to see some second choice people. End-to-end stuff. I think corners make a comeback over 9.5.
Nick's corner special. There it is. So, Scotty, you cooked up our pod lock of the week.
I have a question. Live question before Scotty goes. Can I throw in a bonus pick?
Always.
Like just a pod bonus pick if you guys agree with me.
Doesn't count for the record, but you can throw it in if you want.
Won't count. Okay. Everton plus 115 at Burnley. I think that is an insanely good number for a 7-win, 4 out of 5 win Everton team that is already out of the relegation zone. And if they were not docked points, would only be 4 points behind a Man United team.
Yeah,
they would
in the top half of the table, I
very
think.
squarely in ninth place.
Yeah. Don't hate it. Sean Dyche effect in full force right now. But yeah, not too bad. So Podlock, as Coach mentioned, cooked something up. Going to France, we got Monaco money line and the over 1.5 parlay versus Lyon. Monaco are at home. Lyon currently in last place, looking really poor this season, boasting the league's second worst defensive record with 27 goals in 15 matches. On the flip side, Monaco are currently in third with the league's second best goal scored tally with 31s in the same amount of matches, so averaging better than 2 a match. Look, the over is virtually assured. We tried looking at Monaco's team total over 1.5, and that's minus 205. So the expectation is Monaco's going to get that total by itself. But I can't imagine Monaco dropping points at home to the worst team in the league right now. So minus 25 for a high scoring, or not even a high scoring, but at least a 2-goal win for Monaco seems a pretty fair price.
So crazy to me that Lyon's so bad. I remember like when I first started getting into European football, right? Lyon was a Champions League team. I remember one of the first Champions League matches I watched with Roma was against Lyon with that Mancini like step over. Nick, I don't know if you remember that one before they got absolutely just mantled by United in the next round. Yeah, it's just crazy that they're so bad now, that they're like heading for relegation at this rate.
Crazy. Is that where Eden Hazard started? Or no, that's Lille. Lille,
yeah, I think it was Lille.
Wrong.
Listen, I do want to point out in the midst of our mediocrity, Podlock is on fire. We are 10-4-1 on the season. So 15 games, 15 weeks, 10 winners, only 4 losses. Game of the week is hot. So time to jump on board.
Something's got to cook, right?
Yeah.
So we will leave it there. Obviously, if you're listening or watching, you know where to find us. As well, you can find us on our Twitter at KicksPicksPod. Scotty's also started doing a weekly piece on happyhoursports.net, breaking down each Premier League weekend. We also cook up some other things there from time to time. And yeah, we'll be back next week, hopefully with some plus money results coming in. Enough with this mediocrity, mid-table fluff we've been throwing at you. So
we're like Everton right now. We're like Everton. Yeah. They deducted points. We're down to the dumps mentally, maybe, but the results are decent.
In this analogy, am I the 10-point deduction with my minus 14 units on the season? I think I am. I think I am the 10-point deduction. I am the physical embodiment of financial fair play. I like it.
Yeah, you took all the favorites. You can't be taking all the favorites. I think that is the penalty for just gouging.
So I would take United this week. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll catch you next week.